Hey everyone, we're going to do something a little bit different this week. Instead of doing the usual playthroughs and such, kind of just going to do a promotion for my article here on puremtgo.com to check out this week. There really wasn't any games or playthroughs. I've been working on kind of a series here. I talked about, control. It's really my format. Most of the decks you'll see from me will be control. Last week I did a bit of aggro. You saw the red and green Kiln Fiend aggro deck that I had put together. So this week I wanted to kind of finish the circle and talk about combo within Pauper, and there's not a lot of options available for this. What you do find is, most of the important pieces for the combo decks that we've seen through, vintage and any number of tournament plays, they usually come from, a higher rarity. They'll be pieces in uncommon, more likely rare, the occasional in the new legendary spots, but you really don't find those combo pieces playing around in the Pauper format. So you see here, what I decided to do is take a quick look. I'm going to show you these decks, kind of talk about them a little, and just recommend you go over to puremtgo.com, check out the full article. But this is just a summary for anyone who comes across this and does not read my articles on a regular basis. So here we go. I started out, I want to look at Storm. Storm is kind of the biggest combo deck that you will see within Pauper, competitive Pauper at the very least. Storm is a mechanic that when you play the spell, you copy that spell with Storm for once for every time that a spell was played during that turn. So you play 5 spells, you're making 5 copies kind of thing. So there are 2 basic versions that you will encounter. One of those happens to do with, I'm going to call it Red Storm. That's the one based around either Empty the Warrens and or Grape Shot. The other one I'm going to kind of call Esper Storm, and that bases around Temporal Fissure. And I hope this shows up well enough that you can read the deck list here. If not, again, check out the article, puremtgo.com. It'll come out this week, hopefully. So this is the Fissure Storm deck. There is another video on this channel where I do a playthrough of this deck against Mono Blue. It's called Making Mono Blue Rage Quit, I believe. And you can just see it in action. But basically this deck revolves around Temporal Fissure is the Storm condition. It wants to storm off multiple Temporal Fissure cards to bounce all of your opponent's permanents and kind of clear the board, making way for you to attack through. Now this can be a little bit slower because your win conditions do fall within here. You see there are Cloud of Fairies, Nightscape Familiar, Muldrifter. Those are kind of your beaters. What's going to happen with this deck is your mana ramp comes through the cards that have the untap ability. This is Cloud of Fairies and Snap. Now these 2 cards here, they're a 1 and a blue, and when you play them you untap 2 lands. Now this 2 lands part is critical, because what this allows you to do is untap, you run 6 of the Ravnica lands, where each land taps for 2 mana. So kind of that wording is what makes this deck so good, is the fact that it's untap 2 lands. So you tap 2 Ravnica lands, you've gained 4 mana. Now if you were to just cast, let's say, Cloud of Fairies, so you cast that, you are down to 2 mana. Now that ability goes on the stack and allows you to untap 2 lands. So you untap those 2 lands that you had already paid for, and you tap those again, you're now up to 6 mana. So playing Cloud of Fairies netted you plus 2 mana. Now where this gets even better is the fact that it does run these 4 Nightscape Familiars and 4 Sunscape Familiars, and what those enable you to do is reduce the mana cost of any blue spell by 1 colorless. So right now your Cloud of Fairies only cost you 1 blue, so what you're actually going to net is plus 3 mana instead of the plus 2. Another thing that's worth mentioning, if you're not already aware, what you want to do is use these 4 snaps and use them to bounce Cloud of Fairies, because that continues to ramp it. If you have to use them in a defensive, or offensive front, that's great. But kind of in the early game when you first combo off, you're going to want to bounce those Cloud of Fairies with the snap so that you can continue to use that untap ability. If you just use the 4 snaps and you don't target fairies, then you're only looking at a total of 8 cards that untap lands. When you take those 4 snaps and you target those to Cloud of Fairies, you've just netted yourself an additional 4 cards, an additional 4 spells, however you want to put it, that will untap lands, and that's increasing your mana flow. So what you see here, you also get some great big mana draws from blue. You're running Deep Analysis, and this is a card that, it's fantastic because of the flashback, but if you look at it before that, it is 4 a 4 casting cost card to draw 2, and that seems really lopsided. So when you have these familiars in play, you can reduce that all the way down to 1 blue, and that draw engine is really what's going to keep this deck moving. You're going to be able to play that 4C, and all those things, the compulsive research, for just 1 blue mana, and that kind of allows you to build up your spell count. But as you can see, Temporal Fissure is kind of the control aspect. You will storm that off, you will bounce all of your opponent's permanents. But what the win condition is going to be is you're going to have to attack through and actually do 20 damage through Cloud of Fairies, through Mulldrifter, all these low attack power creatures. So it's a little slow, but that's kind of the way this one works. And let's scroll down here real quick. Take a look at the second version here. The second one I talked about is what I'm calling the Red Storm. These decks use either Empty the Warrens and or Grape Shot. Sorry, mind blanked for a minute there. As the storm conditions for win. In the case of Grape Shot, you'll want to get 20 plus storms into play so that you can do the 20 damage direct to your opponent and get the win. Empty the Warrens, you want 10 to 20. Get those creatures. A lot of them are running, you see here, the Goblin Bushwhackers, and that enables you to only do 10, actually even less than that, only 9 Goblin tokens are necessary for the win because of the haste ability there. So, that's great. That's kind of the win conditions. Now, there are a million different varieties of this deck based around lands and other spells. Some decks will choose to use Empty the Warrens only, some will use Grape Shot only, some use both. Some bring in Kiln Fiend, which has been a great addition. I've personally, I think it's in one of my videos, I've lost to the Kiln Fiend version of this deck. Where you get a Kiln Fiend out, and actually I lost it on turn 2. They go through all the storm pieces and they pump up that Kiln Fiend enough to get in for the win. So some add that to the deck. Some have brought in the Spirit, allows you to remove it and get an extra mana that way. But the basic, principle behind this is that they use a whole bunch of little costed mana ramp spells. Lotus Petal, free and gain 2 mana. You get the Rite of Flame, Seething Song. These things ramp mana. Some use things like, Cabal Ritual, sorry, again, blanking out here. Cabal Ritual, they'll bring in the black mana sources to help ramp it up. This one here that I'm showing in my article is a blue and red version, no Kiln Fiend, and no Grape Shot. So keep that in mind. I think, these are both very good decks. I think Empty the Warrens is kind of the weaker of the two. That's my personal opinion, just because I tend to run decks with black control. So I am, of course, running a full set of Echoing Decay, which is a game over to the Warrens. If you watch my other videos, you've seen me talk about that. The thing that's kind of interesting that I talk about later on in my article here is the fact that a lot of decks are starting to do this kind of cool thing. You see this one here, hopefully you can see it close enough, is running a full set of Empty the Warrens. Now, you go into game 1, you storm off Empty the Warrens, you get your win that way. Now, you go into the sideboard, and your opponent is going to try and sideboard against that. They're going to try and find ways to deal with that. For instance, if I'm playing the black version, I'm bringing in, make sure I have all of my Echoing Decays, and I'm holding those, and I'm holding mana open to wait for this Empty the Warren storm to go off before, I can play that card, and then I've got the game won. Now, what these decks will do in these new versions, they will keep a full set of Grape Shot in the sideboard. Now, this does kind of weaken your sideboard, but it also increases the chances that you're going to be able to win in game 2 and kind of break it out at 2-0. So, you bring in the Grape Shot, you take out the Empty the Warrens, and now your win condition is totally different. If you're playing against Empty the Warrens Storm, you're going to be just focused on a certain play style. You're going to be playing a certain way to deal with that. And playing against a storm deck that is based on Grape Shot, you're going to be focused on a completely different way of dealing with it. Things with like life gain will be more important to you. Kind of the generic answer for both versions is going to be land destruction. This one's kind of interesting. It actually works around that. Land destruction is usually pretty good because they run, the sacrifice lands. or the Mask's lands that allow them to get more mana out of one land. This deck is actually kind of interesting. It's a red and blue version. He's only running basics, so you're not going to be able to really hold him down with land destruction. Maybe a little bit since he's only running a total of 15, but it's not going to be as prevalent. So that's kind of what I said. It's really difficult to kind of narrow down the red storm because there are so many versions, and how to deal with each one. There are some generic ideas, but just be aware of what your opponent's playing, kind of get a handle on it before sideboarding options make an impact on your deck, kind of thing. Excuse me. So that's that. It's a powerful deck. This one here I talk about real quick is one that I came across in the DEs. It actually brings in, again, hope you can see this, it's running the Grape Shot and Empty the Warren Storm, but it also brings in Temporal Fissure, so it's kind of an interesting combination of the two. You see it's got the Spirit Guide here, it's running Familiars, it's even running double Mnemonic Wall, which is kind of interesting. So I'm going to give this a test run at some point in time. It's definitely worth checking out the article so you can see this one. Kind of based, I talk about in the Fissure Storm deck, the Esper Storm, it uses the Ravnica lands to kind of ramp mana, and this is doing just that as well. It's got the Cloud of Fairies and the Snap, and that's really your mana ramp for this one, but it is using also the Grape Shot and Empty the Warrens as the win condition. And I think that's a fantastic idea. I think Temporal Fissure, it's a great Storm deck, but it does kind of get held back in the fact that you need to only win with your 4 Cloud of Fairies and your 2 Mull Drifters. This deck kind of it allows you to really ramp up. It gets you that stronger win condition with Grape Shot. It's definitely, I think, a fantastic deck by this guy. So check that one out. Now, kind of the next one I wanted to look at is a more casual thing. I have seen it win games and show up on at least one DE list personally, and that is Exhume. I know a lot of people have taken this card and tried to make great things out of it. You can do a lot of fun stuff with it, on turn 2 if you get that perfect play out. This is kind of the big guy here that you're going to be searching for, and most of the time is this Crusher, the 8/8 body with 2 Annihilator. I talk about here your optimum hands, and I've played a lot of games with this deck trying to get this one so I could get it on video and show, hey, this is the optimal hand, but have not been able to get it. So optimal hand, you're going to basically need an island into Careful Study, so you can discard a Crusher, and then on turn 2 play the Swamp into Exhume, and that's the kind of it's a great play, but it gets this big nasty guy into play on turn 2. It's just very hard to come by. So check out the article. Here's the list. I also talk about kind of the flaws with this deck. It really is focused on playing the Crusher. You have the ability to hardcast it, but you're only limited to so many just kind of opportunities to make this happen. It's Exhume, but your win condition is really based around the Crushers. You consider 6 chances to play the Crusher if you hardcast 3 and Exhume 3. But odds are you are not going to hardcast 3. The first one you get into play is probably coming from the graveyard. So it's definitely a bit harder. I guess this article is a little negative. I do talk a lot about kind of the hindrances to this deck, things like Doomblade and Journey to Nowhere. Just easily get rid of the Crusher, especially Journey to Nowhere, because it removes it from the game. And then, taking a look here, this is the edition of Faithless Looting came out with Dark Ascension. Faithless Looting is essentially the Careful Study in a different color. With Careful Study, you pay 1 blue to draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. Now, Faithless Looting came out, and this is kind of a testament to kind of the power shift that we've seen throughout the released sets, because that was a common card for 1 blue and draw 2 and discard 2. Now, Faithless Looting comes out, it is a 1 red card with the same ability, but we also have here the flashback for 2 colorless and a red, so that gives you another opportunity to do this. And I think this, has a lot of potential if someone actually took the time to sit down. I'm not going to do it because I'm not great with combo. I don't really have a grasp on it in the playstyle, so I'm not going to make a fool of myself trying to. But if you use Faithless Looting and you can use that to as your discard engine as opposed to Careful Study, and then you can be playing in the red color field as opposed to the blue. Then maybe that could be brought into some kind of burn deck where this is, with the blue-black version that I showed up here, you're kind of limited to the fact that, this is your deck. This is the Crusher. If you get into play, great. If not, game over. But if you switch it to red-black, you would have an option to win the game through, maybe a burn package, something like that, as opposed to just simply, focusing on the rebirth of the Crusher. So something to take into consideration. And then this was the last thing I just wanted to point out in my article here was, this combination that has come up for Pauper, Midnight Guard plus Presence of Gond. This is basically the Splinter Twin combination for Pauper. I'm sure a lot of people have talked about it in other places. I know even on Pure it's been addressed at least once. So I didn't go into too much detail here, but I am thinking it has potential in the format. Actually, it's interesting. This is definitely a kind of a broken combo. It gives you unlimited creatures. The guard comes. It says when another creature enters the battlefield, the guard untaps. So when you enchant it with the Gond, and the Gond you tap it to make the 1/1 elf, and it just kind of multiplies. Elf's created, untaps the guard, tap the guard, create the elf, untap the guard, etc. And I think it could have potential. I really look forward to the day when I see someone who actually shows up on a DE with this list. It'll be a really cool moment. I do kind of pat myself on the back in this article. We've had a recent insurgence of blue-black control decks showing up in the Pauper DE lists, and I think that's great. I kind of went on about that in one of my articles, the importance of blue-black and just how I thought the black was a better control option to go along with blue than red. Even though you lose the win condition in Rolling Thunder, but that could be troublesome if that trend continues. That gives you a lot more options. Many more decks out there will be running things like Doomblade, which will easily take care of a combo like this. So, it may never see play. We may never see this show up on a DE list, but, it would be impressive if it does. It's just kind of a hard thing to deal with in a format that's, currently running so many, instant kills. Is probably the best way to put that. So that's that. Like I said, I just wanted to take a quick look at this article and put up a promo piece for anyone who may not have gotten the chance to check the articles out. Someone who may just come across this video and want to kind of understand what the hell's going on. But yep, so puremtgo.com should be up this week, called The Final Piece, and basically just a quick look at Pauper and combo within the format. Next week I will be probably avoiding videos again, maybe do another video like this. Basically going to talk about what, if any, impact the release of Dark Ascension has had on current tournament decks in the Pauper format. So hopefully you guys check this article out and check out next week. I think it'll be a good article as well. Kind of interesting to me so far. I mean, I'll hold my comments for later, but definitely check it out later, and I will catch you then.